2008. We're in Mauritania. I don't know if you ever did any work in Africa, but depending on where you are in Africa, it can be a real. Anyway, Mauritania is, I think it's still like the poorest country in the world. And it was one of those things where when we were operating overseas, my cover was oftentimes that of like a logistics and protocol advance. So we were there setting it up. I get off the plane, and that like white van with the drapes pulls up, and you're like, okay, I'm either going to get dead or detained. I don't know which one. Like we're going to take you to the special guest hangar, and you see all the people that just got off the plane, like walking one way, and they're driving you to another. I'm like, this isn't going to go good. And so I'm like, it's like some like 18-year-old driver, like a 20-year-old, like protection guy. He's got like an old like Beretta 92 FS on his hip. I'm like, all right, I can take that. Do I take out the driver? I'm trying to figure out in my head like where the embassy is in relationship to the, to the airport, so that if I did have to make a run for it, I knew where to go. And fortunately, I get we were all using those like Blackberries at the time, so I get a BBM from my contact at the embassy that says like, hey, I'm here waiting for you at the hangar. I see you pulling up. I'm like, okay, good. So we were supposed to stay at this like government building, but there was this like transition going on. So they wound up taking us to the new presidential palace, which was still being built. And it was one of those things where you walk in and they have all the president's photos lined up, but all of them are like 18 months in duration because they keep getting assassinated.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, this isn't really great for instilling confidence. And they're still like painting the house. They're still like screwing in the light bulbs. And then I see these like two or three like military convoys coming in. All these guys with like AK-47s. I'm like, what the? And they're like, this is my protection detail. That's going to help me with the delegation that's coming in. Plane lands the next day. I've got a pack of three. I've got the head of the organization, his number one, and a deputy. None of them are American. The only other two Americans are the pilots. But the airport, the private airfield, was attached to the presidential palace. So we've got this whole like 3 trucks of protection people. We're there for 3 days. First day, everything goes fine. Second day, I start to see the protection detail is like half of what it was. By the end of that night, we're at the dinner with the president of Mauritania, who it just came out on like the BBC that China was pulling the funding for all the projects they were doing. Because I don't know if you're familiar with like the Chinese model where they would bring in everything so basically the Chinese would go into African countries and say, hey, we're going to pave your roads. We're going to give we're going to give you, lighting. We're going to help with your infrastructure. We're going to do all this stuff, but we want 20% of mining rights.
Mm-hmm.
And so the government would be like, okay, great. We're going to have all this labor, but the Chinese would just bring in their prisoners to do all the work. And they would bring in all the materials to build everything. So the country would actually not make anything, but would also have to give 20% away. And China was basically pissed that they weren't getting their fair share and were pulling out. So now this protest starts coming up to the president's palace. I'm already down half my delegation. So I basically have to take a staff car with my pack back out the back door and get us back to the house. By the third day, it's 15 guys down from like 150. And I'm like, what's going on? We have a couple meetings scheduled for that day. And I get a ping from my guy at the embassy who's like, hey, when are you scheduled to leave? And I'm like, later this afternoon. He's like, no, leave now. Yeah. And I'm like, how much time do I have? And he just texted me back, RFN, like right fucking now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, shit. So I get the pilots to the plane, have them start ramping things up, get the number 2 to let the boss know that we've got to go. I just start filling a bathtub up with water to just destroy all the documents. I'm taking a nail and a hammer and just driving it through hard drives, throwing everything into the tub. Realize that there's an SUV in the garage that can get us to the plane. Fortunately, the keys were still in there and the driver was asleep. He would wake up in a storage closet a couple hours later. Get everyone on the plane, get everyone onto the SUV. We get to the plane, load it. And as we're ramping up, you see the military convoy coming through the gate. And the same general that was like telling me how great his protection team was the one that was leading the coup. And I was like, hey man, drinks on you next time. Next time we're there. I was like, whew. Because the only Americans on that trip were the 2 pilots and me. And
Yeah.
I certainly did not want us to be bargaining chips in some new president's ascension to legitimacy.
No, those are both stories have a common denominator, and that is currency, right? Currency
Right.
isn't just cash. Like, you get in a car accident, especially overseas, um, pretty much everywhere around the globe, except here in the United States, but even some metropolitan areas, I'm sure it works. And that is, bribery is a second form of income for most people. So you always have cash on you. And they wouldn't call it bribery. They just call it income. It's just another form of income because they don't law enforcement, whoever it is. But
Mm-hmm.
it can be cash. It can be the gear in your bag, as tokens of good faith and show that you're a good person. But then currency can also go the other way, where in your second story, you potentially would have become the currency
Right.
for them, because having three Americans certainly has huge money attached to it, if they play their cards right, which is
it has cash, but a
yeah.
different kind of the
Oh
different
yeah.
cash. The
Yeah,
CIC.
real hardcore currency. Um,
No, but you're right, man. Because every time and also it's just about like utilizing your relationships too, right? Whether that be talking about like your home security situation, and just like when I talk about like recruiting local assets, I'm talking about like your neighbors or who
Yeah.
has what, or like when we just had that like really bad freeze here in Austin a couple months ago. Hey, I've got gas heat, so I have hot water and a functional stove. You've got a deep freezer. Like, I've got solar chargers, and everyone just kind of like worked in that collective effort together.
yeah. Takes a
Because listen,
village.
man, like I was never like the best soldier. I was never the strongest or the smartest, but I was always really good at networking.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you know this from your own global experience. Outside of your skill set, your reputation and your relationships can save your life.
Yeah, no
Because
doubt about it.
if someone knows who you are, or if you can get someone on the phone, or if you have those pre-established like that guy at the embassy who I was friends with, we had known each other from FLETC years before. And so we were able to sort of, and maybe it's just that maybe you didn't arrive with a weapon, but a weapon can find you when you're in some of these non-permissive
Mhm.
environments. Look, there's a lot of things that can happen, but it's all based on your reputation and your relationships.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. I used to tell people all the time, especially corporate type travelers, that every business card you collect is more valuable than calling the embassy, because they're not coming to help
Yeah.
you. They're not going to do shit for you.
Mm-hmm.
But the person you met when you were buying that Persian carpet probably can pull more strings than the
Right.
embassy can if you find yourself in trouble.
Yeah. Or even when I was doing, celebrity protection work, the valet guys, the bus boys, the guys who parked cars or cleaned houses or cleaned the rooms, they were much more valuable at providing real-time actionable intel than the director of security of the hotel,
Yeah.
because they were the ones that had the relationships with the paparazzi or with the stalkers or with the inappropriate pursuers, or with hey, there's such and such a person that's just around that corner waiting for you to come around. They've got, a book and some stuff they want you to sign.
Yeah.
And the more you can just bring everyone onto the team, instead of coming in as hey, I'm this, hotshot protection guy, the more you can utilize those assets and marshal those resources, the better your chances are at being effective and being successful and
Yeah.
ultimately.
No, it's all great info. I think everybody will benefit just from these little tidbits in their everyday life, without a doubt. And I think it's interesting that all your service providers that you referenced, they're the eyes and ears, is what it boils down to. They're there and
100%.
they see their environment every day, so they can pick out the anomalies, the weird things, the strange things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And whereas us, that's our first time in the environment, so of course we're not going to see everything that we should be seeing. And
Right. Or we don't know what to see.
right.
Because it's like one of the things my global experience, and I'm sure yours is exactly the same, has proven time and time again, is that when you don't expect to see danger, you simply fail to see the warning signs that something bad is about to happen.
Yeah.
But the warning signs are always there, and staying safe is about training yourself to see them. And if you are not in a position, if you are not inoculated into that environment, the
Mhm.
best assets for you are the people who are. Like,
Yeah.
what's one of the first things you learn in like any kind of like wooded or jungle warfare? Like, if the birds aren't chirping, someone else is there,
Right. Yeah. Just pay
right?
attention to the environment. But Got to
Right.
know what to pay attention to.
Right.
But I think we complement each other on all this type of stuff, because I'm constantly telling people like, hey, it's the word situational awareness is overused, underutilized, and it really boils down to it's impossible to pay attention to everything. And if you're paying attention to everything, then you're not really paying attention to anything, because you just can't do it. So you have to know what to look for in order to see it. And it complements exactly what you just said. You're listening to Can You Survive This Podcast? Thanks for tuning in. Please make sure to subscribe, rate, and share on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your favorite shows.